perhaps have seen our loved ones, neighbors, friends, or perhaps have seen too many clippings through media, too many radio shows regarding the death and the demise of human beings because of this disease. What do you really understand about this virus? How do you really feel about it? Today I want to talk about that feeling that you may have about the AIDS virus, because our feelings are very, very important to us. As a matter of fact, they are really the force that determines our capacity to master all of our experiences that we are creating for ourselves. The AIDS virus is a pandemic entity right now. It is actually the scourge of the 90s. When we have these pandemics that occur continuously through history, what does it represent? What is it really asking of us? I have done considerable research on this, and I have looked at and have concluded several things that we will discuss this evening. The AIDS virus is truly a blessing. Yes, I say that it is a blessing. Most of you perceive that this is a terrible thing that causes the body to become very racked and wretched, perhaps causes your loved ones to not even recognize who they are, where they are, or who you are anymore. But I say that that representation of AIDS is by choice. Yes, by choice. That you actually have the capacity to determine whether you will be a victim and be infected, whether being infected means that you will actually succumb to the virus, and also that you have the choice to decide that you will or will not die from this virus. That is correct. I know that this seems to be very astounding to you, because most of the information that you're receiving continuously talks about the statistics of those who have died, the statistics of those who are infected but yet are not actively manifesting the disease, the statistics of those who presently are in what is known as ARC. I say that AIDS is curable, because it's important to begin to understand that there is no such thing as an incurable disease, only incurable states of consciousness. I talked about earlier asking you to assess how you really feel about this virus. Have you really just taken a moment and sat down and decided, how do you really feel about AIDS? When you think about it, do you immediately decide not to think about it? It's a denial factor for you. Do you immediately feel nauseated, sick way down in the gut of your stomach, and feel totally incapacitated and just outright in terror? Well, it's quite obvious that the world today has one common emotion that is being experienced around this disease, and that is the emotion of fear. What is fear? Do you understand what fear really is? Fear is a self-created feeling based upon the pseudo-realization that one does not have the capacity to master a perceived experience. Now, I'll just say that for you again. Fear is a self-created feeling based upon the pseudo-realization that one does not have the capacity to master a perceived experience. Now, I've said some very profound and very important words in that definition. Fear is self-created, that it is a feeling. What is a feeling? A feeling simply is attaching a feeling to a thought, or should I say an emotion, to a thought. It's very, very important to understand that this is an emotion that is created by a sensation in your body connected to a particular mindset. And the pseudo-realization is defined as the inability of you to accurately absorb and identify the totality of an experience. The inability to accurately absorb and identify the totality of an experience. Now, what do I mean when I say pseudo-realization? A good example, simply. You know that your salt shaker is in the kitchen cabinet where you always keep it. You go to the kitchen cabinet, open the cabinet to reach for the salt shaker. You immediately recognize that it is not there. You begin to search other areas, etc., knowing that should not be where the salt shaker is placed. And as you concluded, upon looking, you see that the salt shaker is not there. You then decide to start from the beginning and you return to the original area, the original cabinet where you always keep the salt shaker. And lo and behold, the salt shaker was sitting in that space that you last put it in. Now you have identified that no one else has been in the kitchen, only you, that you obviously have not been able to totally absorb that experience and be able to identify everything in it, especially that you went to the experience for, which was for the salt shaker, even though it was always there. That is known as pseudo-realization. And this is a big issue that is being experienced by too many people around AIDS. The question here is fear, an emotion, and is it real? Now, as I said, the emotion of fear is self-created. It's you deciding to connect a particular mindset or thought to a sensation in your body. Now, let's begin to look at the body. Most of us perceive that our physical vehicles, as I call them, barometer, is us. That's it. However, we have been able to identify, and this is very ancient information, that we actually have 5 bodies. We have that soul quality that is talked about in our religious institutions, known as the creator of all things, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever name that you might give this particular divine, omnipotent portion of yourself. We have the spiritual body, which everybody talks about being spiritual, what is not spiritual, but we recognize that this is an important aspect of our anatomy. Yes, it is a body. It is an energy field that we create, that we were born with, that we imbue or either neglect, and that we are held responsible for. We have a mind body. The mind is an energy field also. It is not in the head as we think. It is a field of energy that totally encases the physical body. And we have an emotional body. Not just emotions, but it actually is a continuous continuity of energy that continuously stimulates a sensation in the physical body and an intense sensation in the physical body when we have married it to a thought. So we have an emotional body. So let me just delineate these just very quickly. Our soul body, our spiritual body, our mental body, emotional body, and then we have our physical body. Now the physical body is the total collection of the interaction of all of the other 4 what we call subtle bodies. They're called subtle bodies because most people have not activated those parts of the brain that would allow them to actually see these other 4 energy fields of themselves. But the physical body is the total interaction, collective total interaction of these other 4 subtle bodies. So when you actually are looking at your physical persona, your physical body, you're looking at your spiritual self, your mental self, your emotional self, and your soul spirit essence. Now, how does this get back to relating to the emotion that we're discussing in relationship to AIDS, known as fear? Now, very interesting things have been released in the last 20 years scientifically about the influence that the emotional and mental body play upon the physical body. We begin to really become aware of the influence of the emotional body and mental body when the police and forensic pathologists begin to use a little device known as the lie detector. That this was capable of monitoring our true emotions and feelings around certain questions. Yes, the energy bodies now that I'm discussing can numerically and energetically be defined. And we are realizing that these energy fields do cause the cells in the body to action or to act in a particular way, and also to relinquish their activities when certain emotional fields are created and exposed to the cells. Now, what's happening here? Because if you notice, I'm talking about energy on one hand, and then I'm talking about what appears to be a substantial, concrete, solid piece of matter known as the physical body. Well, we begin to find out that the physical body is not as solid as we think that it is. It's a perception that our physical body is solid. It is a concise, concentrated collection of energy that is not as dispersed as our other four bodies, which allows us to see it in a certain shape, size, and form. However, the interaction of the energy from the other four bodies is always occurring through the physical body. There's a wonderful organ that we have known as the brain, part of the central nervous system, that is responsible for actually altering the frequency of activity of the electrons, the molecules that compose our other four bodies, and allowing those energetic entities known as electrons, protons that make up molecules to be slowed down to such an extent that they now become liquid. Yes, they become what I call just almost a two-dimensional reality. So that means that every thought that you have from the mental body, every feeling that you have from the emotional body now is turned into a liquid reality by the brain. The brain then releases this liquid into the bloodstream, through the nerves, and into the fluid that actually bathes the entire spinal cord and the inside of the brain, so that every cell in your body is exposed to what you are thinking and what you are feeling all of the time. And this happens in nano split seconds, which is extremely rapid. Now, if you have been following what I've been talking about, this takes us into a different realm of perceiving how our emotions will either activate and stimulate high quality functioning of our cells, or it will totally annihilate and totally bring about a cessation of any action on the tissues of the physical body. Now, very interestingly, there's a group of scientists known as integral physicists, INTEGRAL, and these physicists have been able to numerically identify that each emotion that we have gives off a particular energy frequency to the cells of the body. Now, when the cells of the body through the brain, because remember everything is now processed through the brain and turned into a liquid, is released to the cells of the body, they respond in very definite ways all of the time. And we have found that there are three primary emotions of peace, harmony, and joy that immediately cause the cells in the body to function in their most optimal state. We have seen tissue cultures that when exposed to chemistry taken from the bloodstream, taken from tears, and put into the media of these cells, that these cells do not age. They're able to metabolize for indefinite periods of time, and they're able to totally assimilate the foods that are available to them. Even when these cells are put into these medias of these liquid aspects of these emotions in a deprived state, that is, the media intentionally has nutrients that are normally missing from the environment, these cells are still able to function in a very high quality fashion. Now, on the other hand, the same experiment has been done with the use of substances taken from individuals who are in states of fear, anxiety, depression, total horror, and are put into the media of these tissues. What happens? immediately the physiologic activity of the cells is completely altered. We find that the cells become sluggish. The cells do not carry out all of the procedures seen in the cells that are working at their optimal state, and depending upon the substance added to the environment of these cells, the cells actually stop functioning at all and eventually die. One of the most caustic, devastating substances made by the emotion known as fear totally devastates the functioning of all tissues of the human body. We immediately have noted that the white blood cells, whether they're T cells, B cells, our normal neutrophils, etc., totally become almost inactive, if not totally inactive, when exposed to the neurotransmitters made by the brain when the individual decides that they are in this emotional state. Now, this is awesome. And if you understand what I'm saying, let's take a little walk back in history and understand how this unspoken of scientific reality has truly been the foundation for why we have seen individuals be able to live under what we perceive as horrendous conditions in the face of outrageous, massive disease epidemics and not be infected, not have one day of illness. This also would account for the capacity of individuals who have always lived by the standard of that day, a high quality life. Supposedly they were to be happy, etc., but immediately after the announcement that there was a pandemic in the area, became ill, symptomatic, and died. You know, I often wondered when I was studying my medical books, when I used to read these historical medical renditions of particular diseases, as to why didn't everybody just totally die? Because really we should not be here if these diseases were totally enveloping and destructive as they have been alleged and actually marketed, okay, to be. Why was it that the wife was able to take care of the husband, take care of the children who had the bubonic plague or the black plague, and still be able to function? Even though she unfortunately had to perhaps bury her husband, watch her children die, she did not succumb to any of the symptoms and had the strength not only to take care of herself, but also those that she loved. When we really begin to interview these individuals who have done this under many circumstances, whether it's because of epidemics, whether it was during wartime, whether it was during the Depression, etc., there always was a general consensus that the emotional state that they were in was definitely not one of fear. Now, what have we been able to recognize about many individuals today in relationship to the AIDS virus? Morbid fear is plaguing the earth right now and has been attached to this particular disease entity. People are now afraid to touch each other. As a practitioner, I now have to actually wear rubber gloves to do anything in relationship to breaking the skin. And this has been a mandate that has been handed down into all of the institutions here in the Western world as how healthcare practitioners will handle their clients and vice versa. We now have individuals who are afraid to sit next to people if they are now understanding that a family member has this virus. The children are no longer allowed to go to the home. These individuals are isolated in the community. They're totally asked to leave institutions, whether it be the church, the school, etc. We're finding that individuals are now carrying around spray bottles of virucides, hoping that they can sterilize everything before they are using public facilities or eating at restaurants, etc. Those are the actions of people who are terrified and in fear. And what so ironically happens is that when individuals take on this perception about an experience, they are then given the gift of the experience itself. And this is truly the foundation as to why this virus is having the capacity to infect so many individuals. There's been a lot of information alleged about what has really happened with this virus, and I do just want to share it with you. I'm quite concerned because there seems to be a real big inconsistency about where this virus came from, how was it introduced into the public eye, etc. Well, let's just look at some of the facts that have been spoken by some of my colleagues that I think are very, very accurate. As you know, we have the Strecker Memorandum now that is actually available for us. This was put out by Dr. Robert Strecker out of California, a well-known, reputable internist who has put out a video that is available for purchase that gives some of the following facts. So let's just actually look at what's going on here, and I want to get this clear with you. I'm going to give you this information based on myths and then facts. Now, I wrote an article in 1990 entitled AIDS the Disease, AIDS the Condition. Which one are you susceptible to? So we have to understand that before we can master any experience, we have to have what? Information on board to understand what it is that is actually being asked of us. So let's look at this. The myth. As of 1990, we were told that there were less than 5,000 to 6,000 people in the United States that were infected with this virus. Now, the 1990 statistics have identified that 23 to 25 million individuals are infected in the United States, and that it's estimated that 500 million are infected in Africa, that 1/3 of the Japanese population has been also infected with the AIDS virus, but of a particular type known as HTLV2 or the leukemic virus. We've been told that the AIDS virus is sexually transmitted, or that it is a STD, a sexually transmitted disease. Presently, it has really been identified that no virus has ever been found in the sperm or has been found in the sperm. That they only have seen and found the viruses in the macrophages of the semen, but not in the sperm itself. And that's very, very important. We'll talk about that later. Now, we've been told that condoms can prevent the total eradication or the spread of AIDS. To this date, it has been identified that the size of the AIDS virus still has the capacity to move through the spaces between the molecules of rubber that form the actual condom. This was totally true with the use of lamb's skin condoms, and we still are having questions as to whether this is still true with the latex. Now, we have been told that we really do not understand where the AIDS virus has come from, but the facts are developing more and more every day that this was a genetically engineered virus made by man, and it appears as though this virus was genetically engineered in some of our scientific laboratories here in this country. Now, it has been told to us that the spread of this disease is through sexual contact, IV drug usage, and through blood contamination. Our studies factually have shown that this is true. However, there's some information that has not been imparted about the characteristics of this virus. Studies done in France have proven that the AIDS virus can live outside the body for at least 10 to 14 days, and that upon contact with moisture, it becomes immediately activated. This virus also is active when it is shed from any individual who presently is carrying the AIDS virus. So if their saliva winds up on dishware, silverware, on food, or if their urine happens to contaminate anything that we might come in contact with, because the virus is shed through the excrements of individuals who are shedding the virus, that these are also truly viable sources of infection. Now, do understand that eating behind an individual, breathing air that has been contaminated with the AIDS virus because an individual has coughed or sneezed into the air is a possible source of infection. Also, that there are vectors, insects, that can also carry this virus and infect us: mosquitoes, ticks, fleas, and flies. So there are innumerable ways that the AIDS virus can have an entryway into our body. Now, who is susceptible? Now, obviously, anyone is susceptible to the virus. This is what we've been taught. But is that really true? And this is what we're questioning today. We've already been taught that allegedly people with already present diseases, our hypertensives, our diabetics, our arthritics, our individuals with heart disease, cancer, pulmonary disease, liver disease, and yes, those of you who are also obese, because that is a stress on the body, on the immune system, are susceptible to the AIDS virus. Now, this is very interesting, and I'm going to just interject some information right here. We have discovered that there are a set of genes in every living organism that, when activated, will begin the auto-destruction of the organism that these genes dwell within. Now, scientifically, these have been known as the MEDEA genes, MEDEA, which stands for Maternal Effect Dominant Embryonic Arrest. And it's very interesting because my personal observation has been that as I have observed these different forms of a diseased process in the physical body, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, heart disease, etc., they all bring about an alteration in normal function, which, if not stopped, will actually bring about the destruction of the individual. Sounds like the MEDEA gene, doesn't it? And I suspect that these diseases are really not entities of their own right, but are actually multiple symptomatic modalities of an auto-destruct process in action. Now, I bring this up at this time because I want to go back to what we were speaking of earlier, the fear modality of this disease. What is really happening here? It seems to be leading us to this point in time. We're now identifying a type C personality, a type B personality that makes us prone for heart disease, a type C personality that makes us prone for cancer, that in all of these different type of disease syndromes, there is this emotion that is definitely connected to fear that seems to be the seed foundation that causes the